The ASUS Zephyrus S is a thin gaming laptop with some nice specs. But how hot does it get, and is there any throttling? In this video, I'll perform some detailed thermal testing to find out how overclocking and undervolting can help improve performance and temperatures. In my configuration here, I've got the Intel i7-8750H CPU with NVIDIA GTX 1060 graphics. So expect different results with the 1070 Max-Q version. Thermal testing was completed with an ambient room temperature of 22 degrees Celsius. So expect warmer temperatures in a warmer environment. Also keep in mind there are heat pipes shared between processor and graphics. So a change in one component may affect the other. Like other ASUS laptops, this one lets you pick between silent, balanced, and turbo modes. These are built-in profiles that increase performance at the cost of boosting fan speed and CPU TDP. And I've done my testing with all three. Starting at the bottom of the graph, at idle, the temperatures are fairly cool with silent mode, shown by the light blue bars. The gaming tests were done with Watch Dogs 2, as I find that to use a good combination of CPU and GPU. Continuing up in the green bar with balanced mode, the temperatures are fine. Once turbo mode is enabled, the CPU temperature increases by 5 degrees Celsius, as the power limit increase allows it to perform better and run hotter as a result, shown by the yellow bar. Once the CPU is undervolted by -0.150 volts, the temperatures drop back a little, both on the CPU and graphics, shown by the orange and red bars. The stress tests were done by running ASUS and the Heaven benchmark at the same time, in order to attempt to fully utilize both the processor and graphics. Moving up in the graph and continuing with the dark red bar, with balanced mode, we're seeing around the same temperatures. Again, with turbo mode enabled, the temperature on the CPU rises as it's able to run at higher speeds, which we'll see in the next graph. And then a pretty similar story with the -0.150 volt CPU undervolt applied in purple and dark blue at the top. These are the average clock speeds for the same tests just shown. Again, starting down the bottom, we can see that the CPU undervolt raises the average CPU clock speed by around 400 MHz. We also see an improvement to the graphics clock speed every time turbo mode is used, as it applies a 100 MHz overclock. But as we saw in the last graph, this didn't really affect GPU temperatures. Even in balanced mode with the CPU undervolt, shown in orange, we can get better CPU performance compared to using turbo mode. And then full performance with the turbo profile and undervolt combined, shown in red. It was a similar story with the stress tests, although slightly more power limit throttling in this worst case scenario prevented us reaching the full 3.9 GHz all-core turbo speed of the i7-8750H. These are the clock speeds I got while just running CPU-only stress tests without any GPU load. As mentioned, there are three built-in profiles on the laptop, called Silent, Balanced, and Turbo. With the 8-64 stress test running, I was actually getting lower clock speeds with the undervolt applied with the silent profile. With the balanced profile, there was still power limit throttling with this stress test, but with the undervolt applied in red, we were able to get full performance. Even with the turbo profile, we weren't quite able to get full CPU performance, shown in purple, until we applied the undervolt, shown at the top in dark blue. To demonstrate how this translates into performance, I've got some Cinebench CPU benchmarks here, with the older 7th gen i7-7700HQ just down the bottom for comparison. The results are close to what we saw with the CPU-only clock speeds, just shown. And interestingly, in silent mode, single-core performance does appear to be negatively affected. Full performance in multi-core seems possible with both turbo mode enabled and the CPU undervolted. Here are the GPU-only clock speeds, while under a graphical-only stress test. At stock with the balanced profile, and then with the 100 MHz overclock applied from the turbo profile in green, and then with the manual 200 MHz overclock, shown in red. So how does this performance boost actually translate into games? I've tested with the exact same Windows, Nvidia, and game updates installed. The only changes were the ones listed here. Far Cry 5 was tested using the built-in benchmark. The average frame rates at ultra settings were 3.6% better compared to stock speeds, and a 3.9% improvement to 1% low. So we are able to get a little performance boost from this, though results will of course vary between games. As for the external temperatures where you'll actually be putting your hands, at idle it was in the low 30s. With the stress tests running, the keyboard area was alright, getting into the high 30s and then into the 50s up the back, and then similar results while gaming, which is perfectly fine as you won't be putting your hands up the back anyway. As for the fan noise produced by the laptop, I'll let you have a listen to some of these tests. At idle with the silent profile enabled, the fan was quiet but still audible. While gaming and under stress test, it was about the same, and around the same volume as most other gaming laptops I've tested, and then fairly loud with turbo mode enabled and the fans maxed out. Overall, the performance was pretty good for an 8th gen i7-8750H laptop. Even in these worst case scenarios, the temperatures really didn't get that high, low 80s at the worst. While under a combined CPU and GPU stress test, the CPU would not pass a 35 watt TDP, but turbo mode would increase this to 45 watts. As this is the lower spec version of the Zephyrus S, the results shown here aren't worst case. I'd expect the 1070 Max-Q to possibly be a little warmer. But from what we've seen here, it does appear to have thermal headroom available. These differences in performance shown aren't hard and fast rules. There are different factors which will vary results. Primarily, the temperature of the room you're running in, application of thermal paste, and even the specific hardware, which comes down to the silicon lottery. You may not be able to undervolt or overclock your hardware the same as me. It depends on the chip and its specific power requirements. So don't just blindly copy my settings, and do some testing to find out where your stable point is for best results. While you could improve the temperatures by swapping out the thermal paste, that's not something I can test in a review unit. If I go ahead and remove the stock thermal paste and replace my own, I can't put the old paste back. So the next reviewer would experience something different from what you'd actually see with the product, and unknowingly report incorrect information due to what I've done. Undervolting and raising the fan speed, on the other hand, aren't physically intrusive. And as we've seen, it did improve temperatures and gaming performance a little in this particular unit, with no downsides once you've got a stable undervolt. Let me know how much of a performance boost you've found by undervolting your hardware, and what you thought of the improvements here. And don't forget to subscribe for the full review of the ASUS Zephyrus S gaming laptop, as well as future tech videos like this one.